Hello, everyone, and welcome to Food is a Conversation, Alumni Edition. Um, I'm so sorry, it's been such a long time since we have been here, but then finally, here we are. So, thank you all for coming in. So, if you may ask what Food is a Conversation, Alumni Edition, well, it's a series of conversations that keep happening um, every week, which we have not done for the past couple of weeks, but then yes, it does happen every week, um, featuring the alumni of Future Food Institute who have attended the courses either digitally, in person. It could be the digital boot camps that happen, it could be the offline in person boot camps, also the master courses or the certification courses that happen across all platforms all across the world. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Natalie, who is dialing in from. Ooh, all right. I need to ask her to join. There we go. All right. While she's coming on board, I would let me talk about myself. So my name is Gyan. I'm dialing in from Mumbai, and Mumbai, the city of Mumbai in India. It's about 8:30 p.m. for me, and we are going to be having a conversation with a fellow alumni of Future Food who attended the offline boot camp in New York in 2019. Natalie is currently dialing in from Nashville, and it's about 11 a.m. for her. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Super happy to see you here. So, Natalie is also not only an alumni, but then she's also a member of the Future Food Institute, the American chapter. Super happy to have you, Natalie. How are you?
Good, good. It's finally fall in Nashville, which is really nice. So it feels really good here. It's not as hot anymore, but yeah, doing great. How are you?
Quite the opposite here. I'm doing pretty well, thank you. It's pretty warm here, though. We just got done with monsoons, and October in Mumbai is usually warm and humid. And then we shall have the onset of light winters that should start off in a couple of weeks.
Wow, that's exciting.
So, Natalie, I'm so sorry I could not introduce you correctly, and if you, I would be super happy for you to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and why you decided to be a certified dietitian. So, Natalie happens to be a certified dietitian for Future Food Institute, and she works a lot when it comes to product development and nutrition. So, yes,
Sorry,
Natalie,
I
I think we
think,
lost you there.
yeah, I think you lost me for a second. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so we were talking about you, and when I mean talking about you, talking about how you decided to take nutrition as your career choice, and what exactly is that you do at Future Food as a
Yeah,
certified dietitian as well.
yeah, exactly. When I initially started Future Food, it was when I had just gotten my degree as a registered dietitian, which is why I moved to Nashville from the Bay Area. But once I got my degree, I was onboarded to be part of the culinary innovation team. So that team is primarily based in Italy. And so we do a lot of food product development projects with different brands. And so having someone based in the US that could help with kind of building the prototypes that are developed in Italy and kind of sending out the products that are developed back in Italy, creating those products and sending them out to taste testers. That's why I was part of the role in the US, just helping to build those prototypes and send them out for taste tests.
That's amazing. It's so amazing to see how you're sitting in one continent, but then the impact that you're trying to create is across multiple continents all across the globe. How do you feel? How is the experience for you when you are able to collaborate with people from different countries? And I as far as I understand, multiple styles of organizations as well, right? From you said taste testers to people who are into hardcore product development. How is it for you?
Yeah, I honestly love it. I love the Italian team. They feel like family to me. Ever since I joined with Chiara, they've been like So welcoming. I love talking to different people from different parts of the world. Even working with Vioma, who recently joined. She's based in India. Working with Julia, who's sometimes in Germany. Um, I love it because it brings a different perspective, and it really makes my job interesting. And I couldn't ask for a better job, to be honest.
Well, so if I may say so, I attended the first cohort of the digital bootcamp that happened at the starting of the pandemic in July last year. And time came about where in October I decided, right, it's time for me to contribute back to the system. And that's when I joined Julia's team. And I currently am a part of the digital bootcamp team. And we have been working ever since. And as a matter of fact, we're starting off with the fifth cohort that's in November on the 5th. Quite a coincidence. That's in a couple of weeks now. And
Yeah.
interesting part with the digital bootcamp is also that now in upcoming weeks, you should be able to accredit yourself from the University of Nebraska as a visiting student using your bootcamp certificate. So that's amazing for people, those who are
Wow.
getting that.
Yeah, I know a lot of work goes into building those out. I was able to finally meet Julia in person in Italy this summer, and she's amazing to work with. So that's exciting for
Yes.
you.
She is, and it's amazing working with her as well. If I may ask, what inspired you to join the New York Bootcamp, and how did that go about, and what was the story behind it?
Yeah, so that was honestly a last minute decision for me. I had worked my senior year of college at San Francisco State in the Bay Area with Chiara Caccini, who runs a lot of the Future Food Americas, and she's really in charge of that. And that's how I had first met her. Now, that project was not necessarily related with Future Food, but I knew she was related to Future Food. And I knew long term working in food as a dietitian, I didn't want to work in the hospital setting. I was looking for something different. What I liked about Future Food was the impact it had, the environmental impact, how positive it was. So I was actually moving across the country to Nashville, Tennessee, I think like 4 or 5 months later. And so going to that New York boot camp was really a risk for me just because I wasn't sure. I knew I was just moving across the country. I was like, I really love Future Food. I would love to eventually be a part of their team. Um, so I decided to go because Kiara really was like a huge impact working with her. I really wanted to be a part of just the sustainability of Future Food. I loved the impact, and I really could see myself working with them long term as a dietitian.
And how do you see, and how has your progress been so far? How do you feel it's been going on for you?
It's been sometimes I have a hard time explaining my job because I feel like it's very different from what a typical American dietitian does. Most dietitians work in the hospital or they work with school systems or they're working in nursing homes. So my job is quite different from what the stereotypical dietitian would be. So working for Future Food has been it's been incredible learning. I've learned so much. I've learned to write about food trends and kind of observe what's happening in the future of food. I've met a lot of different founders of different small businesses that are having a large impact or just growing and having sustainable goals that need to be exposed to a bigger audience. So there's so much that Future Food has done for me, and there's so much that I still look forward to doing with them.
Absolutely, and I must say the same for me as well. As a matter of fact, keeping the boot camps into perspective, I feel that's one of the main goals that the course tries to achieve within an individual's mindset as well. I'm sure you would agree with me when I say that because you come in each individual, each applicant comes in with one straight mindset, and then you enter this multidisciplinary diverse environment or ecosystem where you're
Exactly, yeah.
and changing, and then you walk out with a very different mindset where you feel that it's not siloed anymore, and it's quite emergent, and it's not talking about one field but then talking about how much of an impact putting so many things together has and what you can.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was huge about going to the New York boot camp is when I had gotten there and they really helped to expose you to a bunch of small brands. Like I think it's Burlap and Barrel was a brand, Imperfect Produce, which is a larger brand now. Um, there was a vegan jerky brand that I met, and it just really exposed me to different viewpoints, as well as the people that were attending the boot camp. Um, in terms of like what is possible sustainably, like you can have a sustainable approach in all aspects. It doesn't just have to be food related. It can be related to clothing or fashion. There's just so many routes that you can go with sustainability.
Absolutely. Again, it's a very diverse term, isn't it? I mean, compared to what the dictionary really talks
Oh
about.
yeah, for sure.
If I may ask, what's the most challenging, what has been the most biggest or the most impactful challenge that you have faced when it comes to you doing what you do in general? Could you give us a short narrative?
Yeah, I would say because of that stereotype of what a dietitian is supposed to be, and kind of what we're told, like a lot of a lot of dietitians that come from my background in education are told, oh, you need to go work in the hospital for a year to really solidify your education. um, I think what's been challenging for me is finding where I fit, and mostly because there are not a lot of dietitians that do what I do. And so I think kind of utilizing the skills that I learned in school and applying them to future food is a lot different than applying them in a hospital setting. So I think that's the biggest challenge for me is really figuring out the skill set I've learned in school and making it most applicable to like what I'm working on in the future.
So, keeping the same multi-diversity perspective in mind, do you feel it's a lot more, it's not just hospitals anymore, but then do you also feel it's with researchers, it's with scientists, it's with engineers, is it with farmers and chefs as well, or how does it go for you?
Yeah, so I mean, with Future Food, you work with so many diverse backgrounds. Like working with the culinary team in Italy, like they have a heavy background in food science, which is something I'm not necessarily stronger on. A lot of my background is how food interacts with human physiology as opposed to the interaction between food. And just like even Julia having a different background. So yeah, a lot of what I work with is mostly research right now currently. So I'm not necessarily working one-on-one with farmers or chefs, but a lot of the Italian team based in Bologna is food science. So they have a background in that, and they really help with the food product development and kind of telling me what I need to recreate that they've created to test for future food products.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And that takes me to another interesting question being, what would have been your key takeaway from the learnings of your entire learning journey? From the boot
Mine.
camp?
Oh, from the boot camp. Um, I think the boot camp was very validating for me. I felt like it was the first time I had found a space that I could work in potentially, where I felt like creatively, um, with my background as a dietitian, with my background being more of a creative person, that I could help have a positive environmental impact in terms of creating sustainable food products and seeing the different brands that were attending that boot camp. And even like touring Google, that was huge for me, and kind of seeing like, oh, this is how they prevent food waste, and it's important to Google, it's important to smaller brands. It really opened my eyes to the potential for sustainability even in my work field. And it was mostly just encouraging to keep going, finish my degree, and then reach out to Future Food after and look towards being a part of their team.
Wow, that's amazing. I feel inspired already. As a fact, I belong to the FMCG food sector of our country. I am a chef by profession. I work
Wow.
in food,
Okay.
and over the past couple months, I have been working towards pedagogic systems. And as a side project I've also been trying to work on a project which happens to be the birth child of the hackathon part of the digital boot
Oh,
camps.
really? Interesting.
We currently call ourselves Tasty Teaching. It's still a project, it's still at its ideation phase, but then we're trying to mix. My team, the hackathon team, I have one colleague who's a psychologist from Italy. I have another colleague who also an alumni, who is a technologist and an engineer who's sitting in Finland, and then me, a chef from India, and we're trying to mix technology, psychology, and food together to like create these pedagogic systems that are super interactive that talk about corporate mental well-being. So that's
Yeah.
something right now.
That
And
is, yeah, that is something I also learned working with food product development and just like being a part of the whole like creation process of a food product with different brands. Like, I think I didn't realize how much psychology is a part of the food that we eat. Um, how we were brought up. A lot of what we like is related to nostalgia. So that was something that I learned. And then implementing new technologies to kind of like use that nostalgia and then like play a twist on it to create new food products. There's so many options, but it's amazing to see how much psychology plays a role in the food we eat and we don't even realize it.
that's true. I think over the past few years, they've been trying to use psychology as a tool to see what the future of nutrition would look like as well. Because again, it plays a very important role on perception, and that would drive positive nutrition when it comes to the upcoming future years and future decades as well. What do you see, according to you, as the future of nutrition when it comes to product?
Yeah,
Or
this is a fun question for me, just being a foodie naturally. And I've actually been researching this recently because I do a lot of writing each week in terms of like future food trends, what I see happening currently, what brands are starting in the US, what's being worked on. Um, and I really think plant-based alternatives is a huge realm that's being discovered right now. A lot of brands are working on developing like either cell-based. There's just a lot of different approaches to brands trying to be plant-based. Whether that's using different ingredients. I was talking to a friend earlier that sunflower is going to be an important ingredient next year. So researching trends for 2022, it really looks like consumers are looking for products that are more environmentally friendly. It's not just products that are healthy or products that are vegan. They're also looking at the sustainable claims, like whether it's low carbon emissions or low water use or land usage. I think there's a lot of work that's being done on kind of solidifying those claims so that people can start putting that on packaging, in order for consumers to kind of start working on their environmental impact, let alone just being plant-based.
do you well, that's quite interesting as well. And again, but then from your perspective, what do you feel?
I think plant-based is the future. Um, it's hard to say that I see the world going fully plant-based. That would be very narrow of me to think that. There are a lot of cultures that need the meat. I see, at least just being based in the US and just going to the grocery store, seeing the new restaurants that are coming. I really see the future as being plant centric, whole foods based. I think people are looking to get back to the way that we were eating before everything became so processed.
So it feels like it's going back to what it was before, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we had a phase where we were heavily reliant, and I'm not a history major, so I can't really say everything about how things were industrialized. There's definitely people that are better educated on that, how that impacted our relationship to food. But I think we have an abundance of food. There's an abundance of processed food. I think people are looking to move towards a direction of less ingredients, more transparency from the companies they're eating at. Um, but also, that's my perspective. Other people could be thinking that food would be going in a different direction.
Well, thank you for that. I also would like to add on to that with what you just mentioned. There is a feeling where people are beginning to realize certain terminologies, and I mean, let's say a term as simple as something being organic or something being sustainable. I think realization within the public in general is improving, and keeping the trends for 2022 in mind, I feel there could be a positive shift towards proper sources of nutrition and
Yeah.
a more diversified portfolio of sorts rather than just being somewhat mainstream. Because I feel it's, in terms of food patterns, it feels as though it was a limbo for a few years, and now there is action that's being seen, and how people feel they need to act upon it and at least change their patterns. And hopefully over time one person does it, then it's a domino or a chain reaction in a community, and then community acts on another community, and
Yeah.
hopefully there is a transcend that happens over a decade, let's say, at least by the 2030 goals that have been set already.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree. I see this was a term that I had just learned recently, but it's called reducitarianism. Um, and I look forward to seeing people kind of open up to eating more plant based. I feel like people are a lot more open to that. But it's also very exciting. There's a lot of exploration into ancient ingredients that are not being used as much, like moringa. I think turmeric is a big one for people. Um, so it's not just about like I understand like people are thinking, oh, well, I need to go vegan. But there are also other ways like to focus on the way that we eat, whether it's eating foods that are just environmentally friendly. So it's an exciting thing to see with different small businesses kind of discovering these ancient ingredients again and developing exciting new food products for people to try.
Absolutely, absolutely, that's true. This also brings me to another question where I wanted to know if you have faced an interesting challenge when it comes to the community, especially you working with nutrition and talking about, how it's simple as talking about the qualities that each and every ingredient has and what you can do to use it efficiently to make the most of it.
Yeah.
When health benefits, what's the most challenging thing that you have come across? Have you found anyone who's been like, nah, this doesn't work that way, or been like, no, I want something that you haven't really worked with before?
Yeah, this is actually my background in food is definitely different. So I grew up in the Bay Area, and I think Californians are known to be kind of hippie and like be open to like eating plant-based, eating multicultural. So moving to the middle of the US, more south, where I mean, the primary foods in Nashville are hot chicken and drinking alcohol. So I would say that when I first moved here, it was just a challenge for me to even find plant-based foods that I was accustomed to. So I think in different parts of the country, there are different challenges. I think meat is heavy in Nashville, in the area that I live in. I do see Nashville becoming a more plant-friendly city. We have some brands popping up. I work with a small vegan pastry brand based in Nashville that I love. And I see the influence they're having and showing people that food can taste good that's plant-based. And I think in terms of like being an example of eating plant-based, that can be a lot more helpful than being preachy to people and telling you, yeah, no, that's not, you're killing the planet eating animals. That's just not an approach that's going to be helpful to people. So in terms of how I can show people how to eat more environmentally friendly is just by example, and showing them that it can actually taste good.
That's true. I think that's a lot of companies are trying to do that, but then I still feel it's a marketing story, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Do you feel the impact of marketing to be a lot more in future, or do you feel people will pick up as time progresses? Your personal perception.
Yeah. So in the process of developing a food product, we have that marketing towards the end of the process. So initially at the beginning of the process, you're figuring out, okay, this is the product we want to develop, just the literal product. And eventually, as you're getting down the line, you're getting towards the end of that whole, I guess, process and where you're going to actually package that product. So yeah, marketing is huge. A lot of times we'll test different approaches to marketing and see how consumers react to it in order to decide, okay, this is what consumers like. And it really depends on the audience and who you're selling to. But what I see is people want transparency. They want to know where the food they're eating is from. They want to know, is it processed or is it not? They just want more transparency. So I think marketing is going to be more, it just needs to be honest with their consumer, because consumers are starting to appreciate brands that are just telling them, this is where we're from, this is what we produce, this is the impact we have. So I think that's going to be a more important marketing approach, especially to smaller brands, just that transparency.
That's true. Very true. Well, the sooner they do it, the better it is, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a personal question. It could be our last question as well. This is from a chef's perspective, and this is something that I have noticed in my community. Now, when it comes to chefs, we always talk about root to shoot. When I mean root to shoot, I mean things that the entire plant, right? Right from the leaf to the stem to the flowers, the seeds.
Yeah.
We try and explain it to people, and there is a stigma. Maybe you can help us clear that. Being like, "Ooh, the tomato stem. Can I really eat it? The calyx, basically. Can I eat that? Is that edible?" And people use that. For example, the stem of a cauliflower or a broccoli or cabbage, banana petals, for example. A lot of these do contain nutrition. I mean, that's something that people who work with nutrition know. Now, you are a person who works with nutrition, and I would
Yeah.
like to tell the world out on what's your perception and what's generally considered waste. How can nutrition be extracted from it? And do you
Yeah.
feel nutrition? Because I know there's a stigma around there. I know a lot of people are like, no, that's waste. You can't really eat that. Why is it that?
Okay.
I mean, according to you, I know there is nutrition in it. What do you feel?
Yeah. There are a lot of different things that come up in my head when you ask that, because I think about the brand Imperfect Produce that I met in New York, and they're basically just rehousing food that would have otherwise been rejected in supermarkets, that just like visibly is not as pretty as what is expected fruit to look like. So I think there's a level of standard and expectations people have their food to look like that can result in waste. So I think there can be education about food is still good even if it doesn't look exactly like what you expect. But on the other hand, um, I think I think there's also set in people's heads that these are what we typically eat from products. Like we use usually the broccoli head and we throw away the stems, or we use the avocado. We don't necessarily use the pit. And I think one way, in terms of like what I do, is just when we develop food products, is utilizing that waste and creating a new food product that kind of mixes nostalgia, mixes like something people are comfortable with trying while also a little bit of experimentation. Um, and for example, there's a brand like Hippies. I feel like Hippies is a good example of chickpea chips. So when they first came out, chickpeas were not really a huge ingredient that was used in terms of chips. They kind of were one of the initial brands to really make it. Um, so I'm not saying they're like saving waste, but they met that balance of nostalgia while also having a new format. So they use chickpeas while still being flavored barbecue, which is a stereotypical American flavor, or nacho cheese. So finding that balance, I think you can reach consumers, let them experiment a little with a new ingredient while I'll still like be comfortable with something that I grew up with. So it's really uh, a balance you have to find that can be really difficult, in order to get people to try a new product, whether it's the avocado pit, or otherwise you can just go through like an extremely new form. Like it's, if you're gonna sell an avocado pit, people are gonna be like, wait, what does that taste like? Or like crickets, what does that taste like? And potentially it will be something so new that people are willing to experiment with, that if they enjoy it, they'll keep tasting it. So I think marketing is actually probably what plays the biggest role in terms of CPG products. I would say it's probably more difficult as a chef because you don't really get to package it up and put cool like words and terminology on it. You just get to tell them, yep, that's a broccoli stalk. It's beautifully seasoned. But other than that, you don't have as much leeway in terms of like saying um, all of the fun terminology or colorful packaging that a fun like chickpea chip brand might have.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you'd agree with me when I say this. That's the very reason why we should have a very diverse portfolio of mindsets to be able to voice out opinions and voice out um, mindsets where you know these things need to come together. Food needs to come with marketing, food needs to come with nutrition, it needs to come with engineering. You need to have this collective mindset to make things like that happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a hard balance to strike.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is it safe for me to say that the future of food is communication?
Yeah, I would say that communication plays a big role. I wouldn't say that it's communication by itself. I would say in terms of CPG products where you have all of the marketing on them, um, you could say communication is extremely important. But if people have a window to that product and they see the product and they don't like it, communication is not going to matter in that moment. They're going to see through that transparent packaging, oh, I definitely don't want to eat that product. It looks very unfamiliar. So I would say communication plays a huge role, but I wouldn't say solely communication is what the future of food is going to be.
All right. but then we can see some kind of change that is coming up next year.
Definitely more transparency. I look forward to seeing too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I know you've just started your day, and I'm ending my day here.
Yeah. Well,
um,
thank you for having me.
I'm super happy to have you here, and I keep telling everyone that the Future Food Alumni channel is for the alumni, driven by the alumni, and for future alumni. On
Yes.
that note, I would like to end our conversation for today, which is the 84th episode of Food is a Conversation Alumni Edition. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. For those who have joined in recently, thank you for coming in. And I wish you all a very lovely day.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye. Have a nice day,
You
actually.
too.
See ya. Thank you, guys. Bye.